What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Heroes Show. I am Nick, your host, as always, and in today's video, I will be covering, with spoilers, Hugh Jackman's newest movie entitled Reminiscence. This movie is in theaters and also on HBO Max, which is how I watched the movie. It is an action thriller written, produced, directed by the co-creator of Westworld, Lisa Joy. As mentioned, it stars Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, Thandwe Newton, who is also in Westworld, Cliff Curtis, and Daniel Wu. Again, this will have full spoilers, and if you haven't seen the movie, then I suggest maybe checking it out, or if you want to see what this is about with spoilers, and then maybe you'll be more enticed to see it after this short video. So let's dive in. I'm not going to waste anyone's time here. When I finished watching this movie, I had an idea of how I wanted to break this down, and then I kind of stopped for a bit and did some other things and went back, and I said, you know what? There's really not a lot to this movie, which isn't a bad thing per se. Again, it's an action thriller. Some of the vibes I got while watching this movie were very Minority Report related and post-apocalyptic to a certain extent because there is war involved. And Waterworld because Miami is flooded and certain parts of the world might be flooded as well. We don't get to really see a lot because the movie particularly takes place in Miami and then another location in New Orleans. I think that one of the biggest points of this movie that really carries it all in all is the acting. The plot isn't super in depth by any means. It's supposed to be this thriller based thing, but it's also a love story, or rather love finds its way, and that's kind of how it all gets unraveled. Hugh Jackman falls for a woman, and he gets conned. He was just a mark. He was just a job for Rebecca Ferguson's character May to do, and he was used. He was grifted, and so he kind of seeks revenge and tries to figure out what went on, like who was she, and unfortunately, he has to go through some stuff along the way, and it gets to the point where she commits suicide. And at one point during the movie, I figured she might end up dead, whether that be the point where Hugh Jackman's character, whose also name is Nick, ironically, he finds her through a memory, through Reminiscence. So let's talk a little bit about Reminiscence. Reminiscence was a tool, an interrogation tool that was used during the War of the Borders. Didn't say how long ago the war took place, just that it was obviously in the past, and now things are complete and utter trash. The town looks array. I will say the cinematography wise, it was kind of interesting because of the shots that we got which were obviously fake, but the idea of Miami being flooded, and as a Floridian, in hearing how Florida is going to go underwater in X amount of time, which it still hasn't happened, despite all the hurricanes we've ever gotten. But maybe it could at some point in time, who knows for certain, but the idea that it is flooded, and when he goes to New Orleans, there's the talk about how the levees broke, and that kind of gave me an idea of when Katrina came and hit New Orleans and how bad it was, and but just so bad in this movie that it was just long lasting. And of course, when we see things like how cities get flooded around the world, this frightening look of how houses and buildings are completely, engulfed or just halfway, engulfed with water, just had a very interesting, look and feel to the movie, which I liked, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. And again, the acting between Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, Thandwe Newton, Cliff Curtis, and Daniel Wu. I thought they all did a great job in their characters. Rebecca did a great, as May, she did a great job in this lover who falls in love with Hugh Jackman's character, but was also just, again, there for a con because of Cliff Curtis's character, Cyrus, who gives her this job to do. To destroy and make Nick Baniston's life a living hell. And the idea of Reminiscence, of being in a tank and having this, a headpiece go on, and then the volts of the machine only going up to 30 volts. Of course, the idea pops in my head: what happens if they go past 30 volts? Does it go haywire? Is it too bad? Well, we do see that at the end of the movie, where once Hugh Jackman does some sort of detective work, I guess, because he was in the war. He served, did some tours, was in the Navy, and then of course did some interrogation work. He once he finds out that Cyrus basically killed May, Rebecca Ferguson's character, he just had this sort of nasty, hatred and anger and sadness in his heart, which kind of gave me this very like Wolverine-esque vibe. And he just cranks the meter way past, basically up to 100. And he just says, "I'm going to make your life a living hell," right? And it goes with Cyrus's most painful memory, which when you see his character in the movie, like half of his body is burned, because Cyrus, who was a dirty cop who worked for Daniel Wu, who was the character called Saint Joe in New Orleans. Cyrus stole from Saint Joe. Saint Joe found out. They tortured him because of it. Then he left, and then when Cyrus goes to Miami, that's when he discovers May and tells May, "You're going to make Nick Baniston's life a living hell." So Nick basically gets some revenge and some payback, and for killing the woman he loved, and because May basically is talking to Cyrus at one point, hoping and probably having this idea that Nick would eventually look into Cyrus's memory banks and find out that he will, like, she's speaking to him and not Cyrus. And then she says his name, and Cyrus is like, "Who's Nick?" Like, and or rather Nick, like, "I'm not Nick, I'm Cyrus." So, it's kind of interesting. Again, like, some of it is a little predictable. She stole baka, which is this like addictive drug. There's also this other front that goes along the lines of this rich man, Walter, who basically had an affair or a side piece with another character who was also from Westworld. And she had a kid whose name was Freddie. And the way they get involved is her name's Elsa Kareen, who is the girl from Westworld. Elsa comes in to see Nick a couple times, or monthly rather, to get her memory of this romantic time. But the man that Elsa was seeing was Walter. Walter is the rich guy. Walter had a wife. Walter had a kid with his real wife. Walter had a bastard son with Elsa named Freddie. Cyrus finds out, and rather the son, Sebastian, who's Walter's son, Sebastian hires Cyrus to kill Elsa and try to kill Freddie. That way Sebastian doesn't have to split his estates, because he knows his father Walter is dying. A couple other questions I had during the movie was, Nick, Hugh Jackman's character, refers to getting burned, and that's essentially when a character spends too much time in the tank in Reminiscence, or you just keep replaying the same memory over and over and over again too many times, or you crank up the volume essentially, right? And it gets burned in your memory. And we can see her in this estate. It's in this old building that she was in like decades ago, when she and her husband Walter were young, and they were pregnant with their son Sebastian. And at one point Nick walks in and dances with her, and she's calling him Walter. Same thing, she dances with her son Sebastian, who she calls Walter. And at the end, Nick basically unravels everything, and figures out the conspiracy and or the controversy of everything, and that all kind of gets dealt with. And so even though apparently burning someone like Nick does with Cyrus is worse than death, or worse than killing someone, but because of him uncovering the whole Walter debacle with Sebastian and his mother, the cops let Nick go on a much lesser sentence, and only getting what Nick wanted, which at the end was basically Nick in the tank on a loop, forever looped, of him with May. And at one point in the movie, which they sort of reiterated at the end again, how how Nick and May are talking about, tell me a story, or a happy ending. And Nick says there's no such thing as happy endings. And something as we know that fantasy happy endings don't necessarily always happen, or it's a Disney thing, right? It's make believe, but they're also true to a certain extent in our real life. And so she just says, "Well, tell me a happy story that has a middle ending." And Nick tells the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, which I have not read personally, but Nick explains it in the movie, or Hugh Jackman explains it in the movie, and it's about two lovers. And Orpheus, Eurydice dies. Orpheus goes to the devil, makes a deal. She comes back, and they kind of live ever after, which it parallels what happens with Nick and May. I think the deal with the devil that Nick makes is the interrogation tool by him just forever on loop. And there's a time jump at the end where Nick's partner, played by Djawadi Newton, who's Watts, who served in the military or armed forces in the war with Nick, was his partner again. And she comes back, and she has this drinking issue. She ran away from her job. She ran away from her daughter, and at one point Nick kind of calls her out on it. But at the end of the movie, we see Watts come back with her granddaughter. And she's older because she's got gray hair, and she's putting flowers on the tank. And you basically get a scene where it's Hugh Jackman, and he's older, he's all grayed out, still looks in shape for some reason. Who knows how long it's the passing of time went? Probably a couple of decades at least, if not a few or several. But Wolverine's body just continues to prevail in that tank, I guess, apparently. But it's a sad story. There's this somber, melancholy feel that I got at the end for Nick, and seeing that Watts has connected with her daughter and granddaughter now, and she says, you miss him, don't you? And she does, and she says, without sadness you can't taste the sweet. And that's such a true thing for us as people. It's always sad to see a pet, a relative, a friend pass and go on, away from this life. But because of that sadness, we're able to taste the sweetness of the good times, the good memories. And there's a lot about that. And I think it's one of the things I like about this movie, the thematical points, about memories, about good memories, about bad memories, about the past, how we hold on to the past, how holding on to the past can be your demise, how it can drag you down. Or you look, if there's anything that you look in the past, it's to try and find answers. And I think a couple of good things. There's another part where the Queen of Hearts is in the water, as it is in the end from the beginning, and there's a man that's on the side of the street that says, I want to find her. And Nick's Queen of Hearts was May, and he does find her, but then he loses her, and then he finds her again, and his memories on repeat. A couple other quotes I really liked from it was, I think May says at one point, again, there's nothing more addictive than the past. And it's kind of true, like I just said. People who cling to their past can have issues, and it's tough sometimes. And there's anything that this movie kind of talks about, it's about things that happened in the past. Where on the flip side, something like Minority Report talks about the future, but it's a similar concept, I guess, to a certain extent. But good memories have a voracious appetite. I really, really enjoyed that line. And that's so true, because when we look to these good memories, we just want more. And it's our goal, I think a goal in life is to create good memories. And, it's unfortunate when we can't. but I think that's something we should always strive to do. And another point of that Nick talks about for him and Watts, based on what Reminiscence is nostalgia is a way of life. And I can't speak enough about it. I know if you're watching this and you probably think about enough things, or what I did was just took a moment after the movie and thought about things that are nostalgic for me. Whether it be something from Marvel, whether it be something from DC, whether it be something, again, that we see in movies and TV shows. I mean, something that Star Wars is notorious for. Again, same thing with some of these other superhero movies. Anything outside of that, video games, books, music. There's so much that has nostalgic to it, and I could say I'm pretty big on nostalgia as well, because it is a good feeling, and that's something that I love doing. I love reminiscing about times good times that I've had with friends and family. It's just a good time to have, and it kind of just speaks upon the our existence about what matters. The good times matter, and the bad times do matter to a certain extent. Obviously, we don't want to experience a lot of bad times, and it's unfortunate when we do. But I think the idea of reminiscing and based on good memories and nostalgia is again the theme of the movie. And executed well in an acting sense by the actors in this movie, but something that we can also kind of think about. And I love when a movie is thought-provoking. Again, predictive a little to a good point of the movie, but I kept watching because I just wanted to see how the acting played out. And again, I think the dialogue was good throughout this movie, especially with the lines and the thought-provoking points that it displays. So overall, I would probably give it like maybe a 6.5. I know it sounds a little harsh to a certain point, because I might seem like I'm hyping it up a little bit, but it was lacking in certain terms, again, because there's not much to it. Maybe if I want to give it a fairness, and I'm not trying to do the IGN 7 here, but I think it does kind of fit in that middle ground. Like, it's not terrible. I think it's worth watching. Again, if you have HBO Max, I would recommend it, especially if you're a fan of any of the actors. It's I think this might be the first movie that Lisa Joy has done, but I'm a huge fan of Westworld, so I wanted to watch it anyway. But I think she did a good job with all points, and kind of looking forward to whatever ends up happening with Westworld, or if she does other movies. But let me know what you thought in the comments. If you liked the movie, if you thought anything from the pieces of dialogue that I mentioned are good, or if there's anything that I might have missed, please share. I'd be curious to kind of chat a little bit more about it. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to help support us. And we're continuing to grow our community here, which is great. We thank you everyone that's been subscribing lately. We love it. Give a thumbs up for the video if you like what I said, like what I had to offer you guys. Hit that bell for any sort of notifications that we might have on a weekly or daily basis in the future. And until next time, I'll see you guys later in the next video. Peace.